Hello Supercoaches, SuperCoach Finals is here. The classic season is done for the season, but we've got 4 weeks of our short form game to come over the actual NRL Finals. To keep your heart pumping, Wilson Smith is here. First of all, a little recap of your classic season and your draft season as well. How'd you go?
Classic season was just a disaster. I had 2 weeks off in the middle of the year to go away for holidays, and I just never really caught up. My draft leagues, one league I went out in the first week of finals. Last week I had a grand final, and my team went well, but my opponent had Mark Nawaqanitawase and Mitch Moses go crazy. So a bit of a heartbreaking loss in the end.
Mate, you should have paid for Wi-Fi on that cruise during the middle of the year.
Yep, I should have, but alas.
For me, finished 4,000th, which it's okay. I'm relatively happy with, considering I had such a horrible start to the year. And I had Cleary as captain in the 3rd round or whatever it was for 2 points. At that point, when I was running 60,000th or so, if you said I'd get 4,000th, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
But still, not that great compared to what has been achieved in the past. But I did win a classic league. It was Trent Copeland's league.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just looked at my bank account now, and I've got the bank transfer of the winnings.
How good.
Have just lobbed, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
On to SuperCoach Finals, though. So it's our new short-form game. There's no salary cap, which is good. So, I mean, if you're looking at buying rookies for SuperCoach Finals, you're just not doing it. You're picking the best players in every position. Fresh team every week, of course. That just depends on who stays in the finals in the weeks going forward. So you don't... I get asked this all the time. Do I need to pick players this week who I think are going to make the grand final? No, absolutely not. New team every week. Captain gets triple points and vice captain double, which I think is huge. But the toughest rule for me is that there's a maximum of 2 players per team for this first week. That increases to 3 and 4 in the next weeks coming up. But still, 2 players. So you can't just target a matchup. Like, for example, I really want that Panthers v Warriors matchup, but I can only pick 2 Panthers in my team.
Yeah, I mean... I suppose it's fair. Otherwise, I too would be just loading up on Panthers. But I do think it's manageable. So I think there's enough good players in most of the games. I'm going to be avoiding one of the games completely, but I think there's enough players from all the teams that you can get a pretty good squad.
So for me, if you like a matchup, and I do like this Panthers v Warriors one, you have to go with backline guys from those games, and then stack your forwards with the games that you think will be a little bit tighter, like maybe the Storm v the Bulldogs.
Yep.
And, well, I mean, Payne Haas is just a must no matter what, because he's so much better than any other prop.
Yeah, and for the Panthers, I think Nathan Cleary is like an absolute must.
The other rule, of course, is that you've got 1 player in every position, including the flex. Your flex comes in for your worst scoring player, same as SuperCoach Classic. So how are you planning to use the flex? For me, I really want to go 2 fullbacks because that's the highest scoring position.
Yeah, I think for me, Nathan Cleary is a lock at halfback, and then at fullback, I'm sort of torn between James Tedesco and Reece Walsh, so I may just go with whichever one of them I don't start at my fullback, but I'm I might be keen to go with another goal-kicking halfback as well in the flex, like Sam Walker as a bit of a pod play as well is tempting, but... So I'm sort of torn between an extra halfback and an extra fullback.
I also kind of like Nico Hines at Shark Park as well, goal-kicking halfback. So we're on the same page there, but he's not my number 1 pod for SuperCoach Finals. We'll start with your pod first.
Mine, so I'm sort of torn, but I think I've identified 5'8" as the position I want to pod.
Yeah.
And so I think most people are going to go with Cam Munster, but I'm sort of looking at Blaze Talungi or Ethan Strange. I think those are the 2 guys that I think have a lot of upside, and we were talking about it before, but because it's a shorter form game and you have to one player per position, to avoid everyone sort of picking the same players, I think if you want to succeed, you kind of have to have at least 1 big pod, and so I think 5'8" is the position I'm going to target for pods.
I actually have Talungi in my team right now, so I like where you're going with that. For me, centre wing is just going to be an absolute lottery. Nawaqanitawase is by far the most popular at 30%, which is a lot lower than the other positions. I think the guy who could go nuts there is Nick Meaney, playing fullback with Pappenhausen out and kicking goals, which he's done for a while. But when he's had those two responsibilities this year, he's averaged 87. So I think he's a really solid pod choice at that position at very low ownership.
Yeah, I really, really like it. I think the Storm Bulldogs game is the game that I think I mostly want to avoid.
Yeah.
But of all the players in that game, I think he is the guy with the most upside, especially if he is kicking goals, which it looks like he will be. So, yeah, I really like Meaney as a pick as well.
You were talking up. I assumed that you were going to come out with Brian To'o as your pod, but you've changed it up at the last minute.
Well,
what's the reasoning behind
he's
that?
He's still on my radar, so I haven't locked in my pods yet, but I do think Brian To'o is another good pod contender. But like we were saying, you can only have 2 players per matchup, and I've already got Nathan Cleary locked in, and I may go Blaze Talungi at 5'8", which means I wouldn't be able to go To'o at centre wing. And I also like Dylan Edwards as well. So
yeah,
you've got a lot of decisions to make up because of that 2 player per team rule.
Yeah, Edwards is really low ownership, so I think he's a good purchase with the base stats that he's got. Plus, Brian To'o, he's had 2 weeks off, resting like a gazillion niggles. He's got hamstring issues, got knee issues. But after 2 weeks off, in a good matchup, we think it's the best matchup this week. I think he's a really good point of difference for your teams this week. We're going to go position by position. We're not going team by team this week. But after Hooker. Harry Grant, 40%. Blake Brayley is at 39%. So let's call it absolutely even on those two. And then I don't think there's any point owning anyone else. You got Watson, Starling, Egan, Marnie. Avoid those guys. So who's the best pick out of Grant and Brayley?
Look, it is a bit of a coin flip between Grant and Brayley, I think, because like Connor Watson, I think, is a trap. Like the last few weeks, he'll probably move back to the bench right before kickoff and have minutes all over the place. So I think you've got to go with either Grant or Brayley. And for me, Grant has just been a bit too inconsistent. He's been off for a couple of weeks, but before that, he was just a bit too inconsistent for me. Whereas Blake Brayley's like in the best form of his career at the moment. So I think he's the clear choice at hooker, and I think I like his matchup a little bit more.
Everything you say makes absolute sense. Brayley is the form guy in that position, but I'm just backing Grant purely on his big game experience. We saw him in Origin this year, and particularly when Jerome Hughes is not in the team, he takes on a lot of responsibility in attack. So I think, and Pappenhausen's not there too, so I think a lot of the attack will revolve around Harry Grant. So for that reason, I'm going with Harry. But yeah, I love Brayley too. It's basically flip the coin between those two.
Yeah, I think in games this year where Harry Grant has had to sort of play that leading role because of injuries, he has normally gone really well. I'm just a little bit scared.
Yep, fair enough. It is a tough matchup, that Bulldogs matchup. Onto the front row, Payne Haas, 80% owned. Is there any point going with anyone else here? He's just so much better than anyone in that position now that Terrell May is obviously not in the finals. So Payne Haas is the guy. Don't overcomplicate it. Just go there.
I do think he is the guy, and I've sort of just locked him in for now as well. But I wouldn't be going Adam Fanua-Blake. I think he has a lot of upside, but he basically needs to score a try or two to get to that really, really high output. And Joe Tapine as well, I think, is similar in sort of floor to Payne Haas, but I think Payne Haas is just a bit more consistent. And so, like you said, don't overcomplicate it. Just lock in Haas.
I like the idea of going with a few pods in this game, and you have to, as you said, but don't take on Payne Haas.
Yeah.
Just lock that in. On to second row. This is a really tough position. So you've got Hudson Young and Eli Katoa are about even in the mid-30 percentages, and then a whole bunch of guys under that like Preston, Grant. I think Angus Crichton is a really good pod. If the Roosters, who have a pretty good matchup, can get some attacking stats, it's tough for me. I've got Hudson Young at the moment just because he hasn't been in great form recently, but I still think he is the best attacking forward statistically in the NRL right now, and he's coming up against the worst defence of the top 4 in the Broncos.
Yeah, I think this is a position that could potentially be a good position to go with a pod, but I've also just locked in Hudson Young for now. I think the Broncos' defence in the last month has conceded a lot of points, and I think Hudson Young could be in for a big game. So I'm just going with Young at the moment. But there are some other good guys that you could go with, like Jacob Preston, Aaron Clark, Angus Crichton. Has been a bit inconsistent lately, but could be in for a big one, or even like Isaiah Yeo. So there is a bunch of good guys here, but I think I'm just going to be locking in Hudson Young.
Yeah, Yo's big game history has me very tempted on him. Eli Katoa, I would definitely lock him in if it was an easier matchup.
Yeah.
But the Bulldogs, even though they're not in the best form recently, their defence is still pretty damn good at winning. In fact, it's the best in the competition. So I'm going to avoid him.
Yeah, and I think Jerome Hughes being out is a bit of a blow for Eli Katoa as well.
Yeah,
like, he could still go big even without Hughes there, but if Hughes was there, it'd be a lot more tempting to go with one or both of them.
At halfback, everyone's on Nathan Cleary, basically 78% owned. So do you have any reason to go against him?
So no, and like we were talking about before, I think the fact that we have a flex position as well gives you some safety that if you want to go with another halfback, you can. But I think for your starter, you've just got to lock in Nathan Cleary. But Nicho Hynes and Sam Walker, like we said before, I think there's a lot of upside with going with one of them at your flex. But I think you've just got to stick with Cleary.
Yeah, I agree, and he's probably my captain as well.
Yeah.
No Adam Reynolds, of course. Big news in the teams today. He's not going to recover for this week. Of course, no Jerome Hughes as well. So halfback is actually looking pretty thin for SuperCoach Finals. On to 5'8", Cameron Munster, 50% owned. I'm not feeling confident about Munster at all. So I've gone with the same thing as you with Blaze Talangi. Ethan Strange is a good purchase too. The guy who is a real roughie is Lachlan Galvin, who I know this is totally unproven really, but he strikes me as a big game player. And no matter if he plays bad and throws, 4 or 5 errant passes, which he tends to do almost every week, it's not about that for SuperCoach. It's all about the attacking stats. If 1 or 2 of those stick, you're looking at a good score for him.
Yeah, I think there's just a bit too much risk there. There is upside, but I think I like the upside of Talangi and Ethan Strange a bit more.
Yeah.
They've both got what I think is really good matchups, and I think all of these guys, Cameron Munster could still go big without a try, but I think the rest of them are all sort of dependent on tries, but I think Blaze Talangi and Ethan Strange could be in for really big games.
So centre wing is where it's absolutely wide open. You've got Nwanga Nitawazi at 35%, which makes sense. He's averaging over 100 in the last 5 weeks, but he is a bit of a yo-yo. He goes 130 and then can get a 30. I've owned him for almost half the season in Classic, and I can tell you it's a tough ride sometimes, but it's an incredible ride at times as well. Having said that, I don't know if I've ever seen a winger so involved in a team's attack. Like I wouldn't say they base their whole attack around him, but there is so much based around a winger, which is very, very rare for SuperCoach.
Yeah, I mean, it's working so well for them, so I can understand why they are sort of, like in the last 2 weeks especially, they've just really made him like a major focal point of that attack. So he could be in for another really massive game. It's hard to tell. 35% owned is probably, he's less owned than I would have expected. But I do think he could be in for another big game, and I've locked him in for now, but there is pods at this position that I like if I decide not to go with a 5'8" pod.
Yeah, well, Nick Meaney's the guy we've mentioned. Brian Tu'o we've mentioned as well. Stephen Crichton, I don't hate with the goal kicking, but it is a tough matchup against the Storm. What about Shibasaki coming back from his booze ban? Could go okay.
Yeah.
With Reece Walsh. I mean, Reece Walsh is feeding that left-hand side so well.
Yeah, I think he definitely has a lot of upside. I think I prefer the upside of someone like Nwanga Nitawase or Nick Meaney a bit more, but he's definitely someone who I would take a look at. And I think the other guy that needs to be talked about is Jacob Kiraz, who could be back this week, but only named on the extended bench, but they are playing the first game of the round, so he could be one to consider if he does come into the starting side late.
Exactly, the offloading king of the NRL, as David Riccio said in his exclusive breaker, and it's absolutely true. Do we think he plays centre or wing? I'd love to see him on the wing, and if he is named on the wing, is going to be hard to not go with. But if he's at centre, that brings down his stats a fair bit.
Yeah, I have a feeling that if he does come into the side, it'll be at centre, just because Bronson Cherry's out, and they'll probably move Blake Wilson out of the side and Anari Tawala back to wing. But so yeah, less interested in him, given that I think he's most likely going to play centre. But if he's on the wing, I do think he is worth a look as well. And because it won't be until the sort of last minute that he is confirmed in, he could be a bit of a pod as well.
Yep, absolutely. At fullback, you got Tedesco at 67% owned, so that is very high. I still don't think I'm going to go against the grain here. You have to get Tedesco averaging 116 over his last 5. Decent matchup against the Sharks. I think the teams in the bottom 4 of the top 8, I think they're the games to target. They're the ones where there's going to be points scored. Yeah,
I definitely agree. I've actually gone with Reece Walsh as my starter at the moment, just because he's been on an absolute tear as well. But I think those two are the main 2 guys I'm looking at. Dylan Edwards is a decent pod option as well. But it all just depends what I decide to do with my flex.
Yeah.
I think I could very well end up just going with James Tedesco and Reece Walsh in the flex, or vice versa. I think that's definitely a tempting option.
Double fullback in the flex, I think, is a real tactic. And Nico, as you mentioned, Sam Walker too. Captaincy, what are you thinking?
I think the match I really want to target is the Warriors-Panthers clash. I think the Warriors they've sort of limped into finals, and they're so decimated by injuries that I think the Panthers are just going to go big. So I think Nathan Cleary will be the guy that I put the captaincy on. I think you definitely need to go with someone who's kicking goals as well.
Yeah, captaincy is triple points, as we mentioned before. There's no real loophole. So your VC gets double, your captain gets triple. So for me, I've got Teddy as VC versus the Sharks, and Walsh and Cleary as captain.
I like that.
Walsh as captain is kind of tempting me as well. If I get really behind everyone else,
it's tempting, but it's also terrifying.
But I mean, he's killing it every week, and he's got Shibasaki back, so I don't hate it at all. Well, that's our first ever podcast for SuperCoach Finals. Big thanks to Wilso. If you haven't signed up, get on the SuperCoach app right now. We'll catch you next week.